Hey everybody, it's your best friend Drew Dracy. Hope you're doing well on this lovely Sunday morning. It's drizzling a little bit outside, but that's fine with me because it keeps that friggin' pollen at bay. Uh, so I've been playing the last few days trying to figure out what the heck should I do for my new episode, and it just didn't come to me right away. And sometimes I just kept thinking and thinking while I was working. And I thought, well, I'm forcing the idea. I can't. It's not coming to me. Maybe something will come across when I look around later. And by accident, I came across this. Caught my eye in my office area. It reprints the newspaper strips that Larry Lieber did alongside his brother Stan, inked by Frank Giacoia. And I remember I loved Marvel stuff. He's borrowing heavily from Kirby, which is fine by me. Um, when this came out, I used to clip them out and basically tape them together and make little books out of them. And I just loved it, even though it took it took after the TV show, which was very tepid. I had a love hate relationship with the Hulk TV show because it looked cool and all, but all that would happen is the Hulk would just throw guys around, and it would take forever for Doctor Banner to turn into the Hulk. He's getting practically like it's practically deliverance going on, and he finally gets into Hulk mode. So anyway, I would cut these out, and I enjoyed them. And also, about the same time, DC decided, well, let's get in the ring as well because I think there was no DC representation in the newspaper strips. Now you got to understand, this is the '70s network. Newspapers were huge. I mean, there wasn't any digital media really at the time. And way before this, like in 30s or 40s and such, newspaper strips actually affected the circulation of newspapers, depending on what they carried, whether it was Johnny Hazard or whether it was anything Milton Caniff or Frank Robbins. It actually sold more newspapers because people were so engaged with it. But in the '70s, it was sort of like the last gasp of superheroes and newspaper strips, and I can't figure out why exactly. I think people just like the daily gag that they would get, from other, the humor strips. So I saw this big ad in a Sunday paper, big color piece with George Tuska and Vinnie Coletta, and it was the Justice League, but they didn't call it the Justice League. They called it World's Greatest Superheroes, and that kind of was so. I thought that was so dumb, but when I saw George Tuska's name on it, I was like, oh, okay, this is pretty cool. Anyway, what happened is I think the reason called it World Greatest Superheroes is so they could get the name superhero copywritten in the newspaper strips. That's the only thing that makes sense because, I mean, a lot more people know Justice League of America than the World's Greatest Superheroes. And, well, let's get to it. To my knowledge, this has never, ever, ever been reprinted, and I really wanted to share this with you all. I got this. Somebody gave this to me about 20 some years ago, and I just loved it because it's just never been collected. And I remember it got me into JLA because my pal George Tuska and Vinnie Coletta. Now I know you're saying Vinnie Coletta. What he did to Kirby was unpardonable. I mean, that's absolutely true. How he simplified these elaborate buildings that Kirby did. But in the '70s, when he would team up with George Tuska, I really get the sense that he didn't really erase or simplify it as much because George Tuska really wasn't big on backgrounds. He wasn't big on. I mean, he would do it if it's part of the storyline, but he kind of shorthanded a lot of the backgrounds, so there wasn't much for Vinny to erase. Let's put it that way. And they were the very first art team that I knew by name because they were doing Iron Man, and I think it was Iron Man '72 at the comic convention with Melter and the Man-Bull and Whiplash. It was my first Iron Man book, and I saw other books by Tuska and Coletta on the Champions, on Ghost Rider, on the Avengers, like all these titles I loved. So I really knew about them before I even knew about Kirby, because at the time Kirby was he was just coming back to Marvel, but it was his stuff was so unusual for me that I didn't grab into it till much later. I was more into the stuff that's now kind of dated with the grit teeth and all that from the 70s. But anyway, let's get to it. I just wanted to, like I said, I can't even remember what show it was. Somebody just handed it to me. It was a fan, and I guess it was when I was doing Justice League with last couple issues of Grant Morrison, the first couple issues of Mark Waid's run on just JLA, as it was abridged. And so this came out, and I just remember, like, you always had the first strip just kind of establish some kind of danger, and here they come. I just love this. It would be really fun to have this reprinted. I mean, I don't know, the reproduction may not work out well, because this looks like third generation photocopies, and I know Colletta doesn't always fill in his blacks all the way, but I just don't know. With the pulp paper too. I mean, the newspaper was like the cheapest paper ever, and that's in the newspapers, and that's understandable. So they're trying to avert this disaster, and it's very over the top superhero stuff that you kind of have to go with it, and that's the thing. It's like there's nothing wrong with that, and that's something that Grant Morrison brought back to comics, because I don't think we'd have had Starro the Conqueror in the Suicide Squad if Grant Morrison hadn't validated the character, which was a corny 60s character, and he made it work. So I just love it. Oh, what's this? Something from outside of it? Looks like a recorder. Yep, it is. A video cassette, probably inside the missile. And like I said, I just loved Tuska and Coletta's work together. I think Tuska could be real choppy because he was doing all this real hard exaggeration, muscle flexing, not flexing like they say nowadays as a phrase, but I love that little disappearing actor. This is just grand stuff. It's of a certain age. I'm middle-aged, and this is my jam, as the youngsters say. I don't even know if the youngsters still say that. There's Wonder Woman, and one thing about Colletta was he was always good at doing women's faces from doing romance comics all the time, and Tuska was always a real rough with. He had a hard time making women attractive, and Colletta, he made it work. He just softened out the hard edges. Meanwhile, Aquaman's stuck in the satellite, feeling sorry for himself. And it doesn't do much for the argument that Aquaman was kind of a lame character for many people for many years. I like the old costume coming out of the ring, which is just crazy. So how do you fit all that in there? You have to be bigger than a Super Bowl ring. See, and you got the classic poses by Tuska, and I like that a lot. And he ends up with a little cutaway view there. Now, I don't have the Sundays to it. The Sunday newspaper strips back then, and the adventure strips, they didn't really advance too far the storyline because, they were like really cool, but it's just that when they would reprint these later in, not this, but it was sort of like a moment, a day where everything was on hold. There was something cool going on, but if you didn't get the Sunday, you could still read the story going on. Does that make sense? Yeah, okay. I'll say it will. But he's trying to do his old vibrating the molecules, but it's too cold. And he's like, I'll prove to the others I'm more useful than they think. I'll handle it myself. Okay, whoop. Sorry about jostling too much. That's really pretty, the Sphinx area there. It's a very, very typical Tuska. Blammo. And he puts the Sphinx back together again. It's just one of the things. Back then, Superman could do pretty much anything. And the stories were more, how can I put it, plot-oriented than they were character-oriented. It's like the superheroes were there just to sort of serve a purpose of big superheroes. They didn't sit around and talk much, which was okay because it was. I mean, in the modern age, it might be a little too much talking, a little too action. That's just my opinion, which is very, very popular opinion. I think a lot of people need to have more action in their current comic books, but this is the first time ever I've seen him Superman do the super breath, which I always think was kind of dumb, but he's inhaling mightily with his super lungs, and he's pulling apart sections of a wall, and that's pretty clever, actually. Slam. Very Tuska. And as a result, I was like, hey, JLA. I mean, the cartoon helped, too. The Justice League cartoon. And like a lot of people, my favorite Justice League cartoon episode in the 70s was the one with Plastic Man, where they had to get something out of a machine, some doomsday machine, and there was a little mouse that was messing up the wiring inside the doomsday machine, like setting it off, and Plastic Man went inside, took it out, and I was like, wow, Plastic Man, sweet. First time I'd really seen him animated. But by the time he got his own show, they kind of made it dumb. They didn't know what they were doing. And then Baby Plaz, the less said, the better. That's so fun. I just, like I said, Tuska, he really took to heart what Stan and Roy had said about making each panel like real, exciting and leaping. And so these characters are never like really in a comfortable stance. They're always moving. They're always kind of, and sometimes it's very weird because it's kind of jerky. It's almost like everybody is it's like they're having spasms, muscle spasms, and there's a very rare staying and talking, but Aquaman's useless. I mean, he got taken out by some radiation, undefined radiation, and our pal Vandal Savage shows up. He's not a focus, but he shows up. Oh, come on, man. Wait a second, I gotta reconfigure. Okay, there's Vandal Savage. He's ready to take out Aquaman. Blast your super speed. Superman, you snuck aboard so fast my sensors couldn't detect you. Take one more step and Aquaman dies. And Flash takes the sword away. He goes, bullets can't harm me. They can if they're made of kryptonite. And I'm just like, oh, kryptonite. Yeah. It's like, that is the lamest excuse. I mean, kryptonite, I know when there was a time when Neil Adams or somebody like that, Neil destroyed kryptonite forever, then they brought it back, but it's still, it's just such a lazy kind of, it's just kind of pointless. It's like saying, oh, it's kryptonite. Okay, if the one thing that kills him, there must be like tons of it everywhere. And Aquaman stands helplessly, and he knocks out this water jug or what do you call those things? I don't know. It looks like something that holds roses in. And he takes out Savage from behind, and that's the end. So it's pretty dopey, but it's so much fun. I love it. It's fun, and like I said, to my knowledge, I don't know if it's ever been reprinted, and it's good stuff. While I'm talking about, I'll talk about something else in the next episode, because I'm trying to keep my videos a little shorter because I'm test marketing to see which shows, which episodes do better, which ones don't, because I tend to ramble into like 25 minutes. So anyway, if you find it anywhere online, check it out. Or if you don't have a friend who collected the strips like I did when I was a kid, it's a real great blast from the past. And have a good day, everybody.